Hello and welcome to Circle Time, the Early Years podcast with me, Glenn Denny. I am absolutely delighted that my guest on this edition is the amazing voice of early years. I'm going to use that one because I've been in a room with you, Vanessa. I know what you're like. We've just had a little conversation where you said you never know what to say. Well, you do. You just don't know it until you actually start speaking. It's the lovely Vanessa Dooley. Vanessa, welcome.
Thank you so much. I think there's probably a little bit of imposter syndrome, isn't it? Because sometimes you just go, I've really no idea what to talk about until you start talking and then you can't stop.
I think that's that bit. I mean, so the last time I saw you in person, I mean, we've seen each other on screen a couple of times, but the last time I saw you in person was at EPOP North, and that was
in Manchester,
February 2020. Wow. It just seems like a lifetime ago. I think a couple of things happened in between then. Can't remember what, but, something happened.
Yeah, I know. It's a bit of a blur, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit. But, it is that bit where, I think you got up and, I do remember watching you. You had the microphone in your hand and I could tell by the look on your face, you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to say. You put the microphone in front of your mouth and boom, off you went. But it wasn't just nonsense ramblings. You had passion. You had, and I'm going to quote that word just behind you, that little phrase behind you. You had that fire in your belly. You did. And it was wonderful. It was motivating. I remember coming out of that conference that day and going, wow, that was good. That was so good.
I think it's probably called something, and I do say this, isn't it the introvert extrovert? So when you're at home, you're very introverted, and then when you're out and you're doing something like that, you have a different persona on it. And I do say that anybody gives me a microphone, I'll end up singing a Dolly Parton song. And I've never done karaoke in my life, but actually I do feel a little bit like that whole, I do need to start saying something when I've got a microphone in my hand, but that's just the way I am, I suppose.
I can kind of relate to that. So, in previous life, I've also done radio. It is that bit where when I'm outside of the studio, I'm Glenn, but when I'm in the studio, I'm Glenn, the presenter. And there is that different switch. I mean, I'm sat here in front of my radio microphone with my studio headphones on, talking to you, like basically just to reveal behind the scenes. I'm talking to you on a computer screen because you're at home, or in fact, no, you're at the office, and I'm sat in my very, very empty office because we're in the middle of moving. But it's that bit where there is a switch in your brain where you've got to do something and it just engages and you go for it.
It's almost like, I have to say this, when I go out and do our quality improvement audits, I always get, when I used to go out and do inspecting for Tribal or Ofsted, my husband always used to wish me good luck, and I'd be really nervous on entering someone's setting. Mm-hmm. But once you get in it, you automatically, it's like this, you've got this tunnel vision and you just crack on with it. It's like this switch, isn't it? You are right. You just crack on and do it.
You do. Now, what we were going to talk about today, we were just having a little brief chat about it. We're actually looking at our under twos, our babies, and our kind of our youngest, youngest citizens that we're kind of in charge of. And the fact that there isn't really, we focus so much on preschool and over twos, but there really isn't anything for our under twos, is there?
No. So this morning I did our first session in our baby training. And we've been doing it now for a number of months. And the reason that I started it is because, like you just said, there is nothing out there. There is the training that's clicker happy, and I'm not going to mention names, but there are those training, and they're suitable for some training. But there are some training that are not suitable for that. And, one of the things was that when I went out and did some audits, it was just like, and it was a scenario where I went into a setting and I went into the baby room and the practitioner was feeding the baby with a bottle resting against her chest and using the iPad to do observations. The baby started to choke. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, oh my goodness. So basically that practitioner didn't have the skills to feed that baby, or didn't have the skills to interact with that baby. So I was thinking, there has got to be something out there, and there are things, if you dig deep, there are training out there for that, but it's not specific enough for actually those practitioners who work with the under twos and especially babies. And one of the things that we talk about in the training is the fact that, and this is something that I give them a task to do, and one of the tasks is they have to create an instruction sheet for my husband. And the instruction sheet, so my husband has no children, okay? He has no idea about early years apart from me waffling on about it at all, okay? If I put him in a room full of babies, he'd look at me as if to say, help me, get me out of here, I need to go. Okay, so I say, one of the tasks I say is, I need you to create an instruction sheet, and then we have different topics, we have different scenarios. So one is like bottle feeding, one is like putting babies to sleep, one is like nappy time, one is like feeding, one is like playing. So they have to create an instruction sheet for my husband, he's mentioned many times, and to tell him that he has to, like an idiot guide, if that makes sense, because I don't call him an idiot guide, an idiot guide on how to do nappies, or how to do bottles, and how to, and do you know what, the first time I did it, I was, and the delegates won't mind me saying this, because they were like, oh my God, they just automatically do it, but they don't do it because they've been trained to do it. They just automatically do it, and do it because they think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But we know, so like for apprentices, they don't necessarily have that hand holding on what to do for caring for babies. They do a module, tick the box, and it says working with babies. But actually, it's not really adequate enough, which is why the statutory framework states that we need to be having more training with those working with children, and especially babies. It's in there, it's stated, it's there for a reason. So it got to the point where we were doing this task that I was giving them, and they were writing the instruction sheet for my husband on step-by-step guides. So say, for example, for making a bottle feed, okay? And so that when they first came back to me, there were like 4 points on it. And I went, but you've not said on it that you need to wash your hands first. He's my husband. He does not know that he has to wash his hands before he makes a bottle. And so that is why this, and also the same for like putting babies to sleep. You know, there are many staff or many delegates who don't know about the Lullaby Trust. Many staff don't know how to put babies to sleep. And that's why it's so important. And you're right about the fact that we do tend to focus on our preschool children.
Yeah.
But my feeling is those babies and those pesky toddlers are actually preschool apprentices. And if we don't get them to do what, you know, and train them and be how they need to be, and how we need to nurture them, and that communication with them, then actually by the time they get to preschool, it's going to be so much harder for them. So we need to be, the baby room staff are, for my eyes, the most important, because they set the seed. They sow the seed for that child. And I don't think that we put enough effort into our baby room staff. Sorry, I've gone on, and I said that I can't talk about it, but I'm a bit passionate about this.
That's why I knew you could. No, it's definitely that. It is a case of that they are the foundation of the foundation stage, you know, the early years foundation stage. I mean, the babies, we care for them from the tiniest little baby all the way up before they go to school. And if we're not caring for them in a way that is suitable for these children, that has the love, has the care, has the expertise in it, then it's not going to go well, you know, and we're going to have problems later on. And it is a case that we need to look at training. I mean, you'll remember as well, back in the golden age of when local authorities threw training at people. Here, come and have training. We'll even provide you with lunch. Do you remember?
Lunch, yeah.
Oh, you know, those golden days. I remember them well. But you know, we've had so many cutbacks, and that's definitely a podcast for another day. I mean, just don't get me started on how little we get in terms of proper funding. But it's been cut back and cut back and cut back, and it's settings are definitely having to look at where best to allocate any sort of money they can for training. And it's like you say, there's that click-through training, which is good for some. It's great for your food hygiene, and it's great for your kind of like your basic safeguarding refreshers and things like that. But is it suitable for something that's so hands-on? No, it's not. And that's maybe where some settings need to focus on improving their quality of interactions with their youngest children.
Yeah, that's totally right. And I think that we forget that. We talked about that this morning, about of consent and the art of consent and eye contact when you talk to babies. Now, you know, my children are 23 and 26. And, you know, and they won't mind me saying this, but, you know, 26 years ago, if one of them had a dirty nappy, I know what I'd do. I'd peer in the back of their nappy to see if they'd soiled it, or I'd smell their bottom. You can't do that. Now, thinking about it, you have to ask children. You know, you have to go to them and say, oh, have you pooed your nappy? Have you done this? And actually getting down to their level, well, I think we need to change it. And that is, we need to give them a voice. And we forget that. And that was one of the things today they said. You know, they pointed out that when we talk about lunch times, staff just come in and wash their face. Well, actually, why are we not encouraging babies to do that for themselves? Or why are we not saying to them, I'm going to go and wash your face now because you've got your baked beans around it?
Yeah.
It's telling them.
There is that bit as well. Like, I mean, you were saying about consent, like for changing nappies, and it's like, yeah, I call one of the children over when I'm going to go and change a nappy. But before I do anything, like, you know, I've said, right, we're going to change a nappy, and I pop them up onto the changer. And I say, right, you tell me what's in your nappy and what do we need to change it? So I'm getting that consent there, but I'm also encouraging them to think about what's in it. And I'm getting to the stage now, okay, I work with 2-year-olds, so they are slightly older, but they're getting to that stage where I've lifted them up and they go, I've got to poo, I've got to wee. You know, but it's that bit where if we ingrain that from earlier, then it makes my job easier as they get older.
And you've got the most powerful or saddened age at the moment because they've gone through the pandemic. And through the pandemic, communication and language is not going to be at the forefront of every parent's mind. You know, parents would have been working at home. Those children would have been at home. I can't multitask and looking after a baby and working at the same time. You know, I'd like to think I can, but I can't. So that's where there's a knock-on effect on those children. The golden 2s, the golden 3s, those are the ones that we have to focus on. We have to get it right. And sometimes we forget as practitioners, and we become a little bit complacent. And and I know there's a recruitment crisis. Don't get me started about it. I understand that. And I understand that we need to get those practitioners in because we have to abide by ratios. But actually, we have to get those right ones. And that's what they have to want to be able to communicate and do, and, you know, improve on language development for children. But not all staff realise that making eye contact with the under 2s is paramount. And I was trying to get them today to say that actually, if you think about it, when they go to preschool, they have so many other skills that they've got to learn. But you in the baby room and the pesky toddler room have to teach them those skills like breathing and regulating their emotions before they get to that. Because by the time they get to the preschool, my God, they're flipping their lid and flying off the handle all of the time. But so the younger age group, needs to be able to help them do that.
It's right, though, that the focus is very much on our older ones, and it's like how we can. I'm trying not to say this with any sort of venom, but it's like how we can improve our results and our stats. And like, no, let's improve our citizens by working from the ground up. And it is that bit where the focus is in the wrong place, very much.
Yeah.
It's like babies are genuinely, they are just the forgotten citizens. They're just babies. No, they're not. They're still human beings. And
Is somebody on the course today? I always ask them to tell me their name, where they're from, and why they're doing the course. I always ask that. And there was 2 on there today, and one said, I was in the preschool room, never worked with babies before. And so I'm doing this course because I need to know more. And at the end of it, I always ask them to evaluate the first session before we go on to the second session. And she said, I didn't think about all of these things that you said that we need to be doing with babies. I just thought that as preschools, this is what I did and this is how I did it. But actually, if we start early enough with those babies, that by the time they get to preschool, I'll tell you, that's when they're going to be learning the most amazing things and be eager to learn, be motivated to learn, be able to communicate the way that they're going to learn, and be able to learn through their play. Whereas it's because we don't start at the basics. We don't start with the babies, and we have to.
I think that's where I was lucky. I mean, sort of when I did my training back in the dark ages, I was lucky that the placements I went to valued giving me that experience with babies. So I did work in the baby room as well as preschool. Like they would split my placement in 2 so that I would get time with babies and then I would get time with the older ones as well. And that, that was amazing that they valued my experience there. They made sure I got an opportunity to work with babies. And I think that's why I've done baby room, as a practitioner. I've worked there. I genuinely don't think I could go back again. I think I've served.
See, I'm a baby person. I would have the babies than the preschoolers.
See, I'm toddlers. I'm toddlers.
No,
Toddlers. I love a tantrum.
No, see, I'm a baby. I'm the up to the 12 months, 13 months one. And you are right when you said they're the forgotten ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be focusing on them. And if we can't get it right now, we never will. And you've seen what's going on in the news at the moment, and it's really important that we understand how those children need to be kept safe, and we need to be able to ensure that we are keeping them safe. Mm-hmm. And we need to be ensuring that we are providing them with the tools so that actually they can grow.
They do. I mean, that's the thing. You see, I'm going back to something you said before. Is like sometimes the kind of the practitioner training that we get now, it is just a tick box exercise so much rather than the experience. Or, I was, like I say, I was quite lucky with my training. I got experience working with babies as well as ticking my boxes that I needed to tick. But the working with babies, it's not robust enough. That it is just, can you make up a bottle? Yes, but are you making it correctly? Are you making it for the benefit of the child? And I have seen it, and I'll hold my hand up as well. I'm probably guilty in the past of, supervising an apprentice in how to make a bottle, but we're not actually made it for a baby. We've just made a bottle, but is it the right way? I don't know.
I think that's why I did the thing with the task. It's like I kept saying to them, my husband knows nothing. He doesn't. And they were putting this instruction sheet together, this this dummy idiot's guide. And it was when they came back with the four like pointers. And I was like, no, you need to think seriously. He knows nothing. So it's almost like, so they were saying there were a few scoops. They were like, oh, it's scoops. And I said, so is it heaped scoops? What scoops is it? And they were like, well, you just do scoops. And I went, but going back to the basics of using the back of a knife and doing it like that. And they were like, well, I never knew you did it like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other thing is how many of those in the setting have those bottle warmers that make the bottles up. Oh. And I'm going, and it wasn't, I'd never heard of them. When I first did this course, I never heard of them until it was, we talked about it. And I said, I'm not sure that's safe. I'm not sure that boiled water, pre-boiled water that's kept in there it's supposed to be freshly boiled water. You're keeping it in there. I'm not sure that's safe. And actually, after that course, a setting did send me something, and it's not safe. It's not approved by Department for Health. So actually, why are we using it? Because it's lazy. So that's why we're using it. It's time, isn't it? It's the tick box time.
I've been in a setting where they've used them. I was going to say the actual name of it, but let's not get sued by the company. No. But I've used them. They are lazy, but also they take longer to make. It's such a faff to make them using those machines. I would much rather get my level scooters. Like when you said the bit with the back of the knife, and like, oh yes.
Good old NNEB, me. Yeah, I know. And actually thinking about it, when I think back to when I did my training, and I am old school and I probably am an old fossil, but we were taught how to do bottles. Yes. We were taught live how to do nappies. We were taught how to, wash a baby's face, how to change a nappy, and the way that you change it using cotton wool, God forbid, and water, not a baby wipe. And the way we do it, that we were taught all of those things, but actually we're not taught that now. And I know this because, a few years ago, I worked in a college. I was a lecturer. I never did that. Do you know what, Glenn? I never taught any of my students how to make a bottle. I never taught them how to change a nappy.
But was it?
It was a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. And it's the basics of how you did it. There was no demonstration. There was no, for me to see that a practitioner could do it appropriately and effectively. It was a tick box. Can you write about it? Yep, you're fine.
Well, that was it. You were locked into that, though, weren't you?
Yeah.
You had your guidelines to follow. You had your curriculum. That was it. This is what you have to do. Boom, right, done. But it's that practical experience I think we're lacking a lot of in terms of the training. It is far too much. I mean, I'm seeing it from some of our own apprentices, and don't get me wrong, our apprentices at my current setting are just amazing because they're working and they're doing and they're learning and they ask questions and all. So, there's a lot of good practice from apprentices.
Oh, totally.
But actually what they've got to work with in terms to achieve their qualification is so limiting. And it's down to the settings to open that up as well, which is where, the baby training comes in, that if the settings put apprentices on that, brilliant. They are setting them up for such an amazing open career where they know what to do from the ground up. It's disheartening to think that so many training opportunities are missed for our youngest children.
Totally. And you know that. Do you remember when we used to have a book called Horizons, and it was like the local authority Horizons, and it was a magazine, almost like a book with all the training courses in. Every term you used to get sent this, and I used to hand it around and say, highlight the courses that you wanted to go on. Yeah. And it used to be, honestly, it was like gold dust in our setting. It was like, oh my God. And you're right. They purely only really, really wanted to go for lunch because it was always an amazing lunch. But actually there is when you look at those courses now, there are no courses out there. No, I don't see them. And it's only when I started, when I released the training, and I put that the statutory framework states it states that they need to. I read it here: for children aged under 2, at least half of all staff must have received training that specifically addresses the care of babies. It says it. Fact.
It is, because I actually read it this week as well. Because I was looking at something to do with our under 2s, and I was like, where's this framework? Right, let me look at this.
3.32. I can quote it.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly. And it's like, it says it there. And it's only when we started putting that in there that people started thinking, oh, do you know what? If it's in there, we've missed it. And the statutory framework, you know what it's like. It's huge.
There's so much in there. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all look at our essential training, safeguarding and food hygiene, that sort of thing. But actually, yeah, you're right. Within the statutory framework for EYFS, there is so many bits in there that are so easy to miss, and that is one of them. And literally, I wouldn't have known that, except there was a question came up at work this week, and I was looking it up, and I was like, oh, and of course, it made me think about the fact that, I knew that, Jigsaw do the baby training, but actually, where else does it? That there isn't really anywhere.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, I'm really passionate at making sure that the training is valid as well. And it's like, we always get our safeguarding courses and the baby training is we get it accredited. So we get somebody to look at it and go, is it worthy of those credited points? Because that's what we do. Because I don't want to put my name to something unless I know it's been approved. Does that make sense? I don't want to do that.
No, it does, because you want to know that the right information's in there, that people are going to get something from it, that they're going to benefit, and then be able to pass that on, and that experience is worthwhile. It's going to enhance their practice. It's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, exactly. The task that they've got today, so they have 2 sessions, so they have a task that they've got to do, and I make sure they have a week between them, and I make sure that they do the task, and it's called Through the Eyes of a Baby. And what they've got to do is choose a baby. Doesn't make any difference. Under the age of 2, could be a really young baby. It could be a pesky toddler, whatever it is. They need to be that they are that child, and they need to get down to that level and look at things through the eyes of a baby and work and write down everything that they see. Because do you know what? Knees don't talk. How many babies see knees?
No. Oh, yes. Do you've made me think back to something that I was taught many, 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 many years ago when I first started in early years, that, when you're setting up a room, particularly a baby room, this is one of my very first manager, Irene, bless her. She was brilliant. And like you, she was NNEB. She was old school. She believed in the child. And one of the things she taught me was that if you're setting up the baby room, do it, set it up, then walk out of the room, go and do something for 5 minutes, but come back in on your hands and knees.
Oh, I can't believe it. That's the best way. Honestly, how many people, can you imagine how giants, it's almost like as well, if you think about like toddlers when they're sitting at the table at lunchtime, or preschool sitting at the table at lunchtime, and practitioners hang around standing over them. Why do you do that? If you were in a restaurant, you wouldn't want the waiter doing that to you, would you?
No, we all hate it.
You'd be like, back off, mate. You would, wouldn't you? Yeah. So why do we feel that it's not right that we should be sitting down with them? And it's all of those things. And if you look at things through the eyes of a child, look at things through the eyes of a baby, it will give you a different insight to what they need to see.
I know, definitely that piece of advice has stuck with me, and I've used it with so many other people in the past. I've gone, they've set up this beautiful layout in a room. I said, okay, go out on, come back in on your hands and knees. What? Do it. And they do, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, I can't actually see. So you're looking at it from the eyes of the child. And I think that's, perspective of the child is so important. That's why, that bit in between your baby training, where they look at it from the perspective of the baby is so important. They need to know that the baby has a view and can see, and what are they seeing? What are they getting from it?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And if we don't, I think it's so important. If we don't look at it through those eyes, then we don't realise. And even those staff today, those delegates today, they were like, I didn't even think. And I went, I don't know about you, but my knees don't talk. They creak, but they don't talk.
I know the feeling. There's many a time I need help getting up off the floor these days.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's why I'm swapping to being a manager. I can get a chair at last.
I know. When I go in and do audits and I sit on those little chairs, I'm like, oh, I can't get up. How do I do this actually looking professionally without showing anything that I shouldn't? It's almost like, do I get on my hands and knees and turn around and get up? It's really good.
I know that's the issue I've got in my current room, because I have 2 different sizes of chairs. I have to make sure I have one of the slightly bigger ones, because otherwise there's no chance I'm getting up. And one of my colleagues at the moment is pregnant, so I can't get her to help me up either. Well, Vanessa, it's been absolutely amazing to talk to you again. just that fire in your belly is burning brightly as always. Please never let it extinguish, because we need you in our world. We need you in our corner.
I always said that when I didn't have a little bit of fire in my belly when I delivered training or anything, then that's the time for me to leave. I'm not ready to hang my things up at the moment, not yet.
Excellent. We need that. But it's brilliant. Will you be running more baby training in the future as well?
Yeah, we will. Yeah. So we've got new dates that have gone out for February, and there are a few spaces left in March. We were doing it every other month, but it's gone a little bit crazy. So we've gone, okay, maybe we need to do this every month then. I mean, that's fine, because I absolutely adore the baby training. And I think sometimes if you get those delegates that go away and go, there's a light bulb, when you see that light bulb in them, and you go, yes, I got it. Yeah. So we will have more on there. It's on our website.
Brilliant. Well, we'll link to that in here as well. But Vanessa, thank you so much for talking with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
No worries. And it's great to see you, and good luck with everything.
Thank you very much. That's it for this edition of Circle Time, the Early Years podcast. Don't forget, you can tune into previous ones on all of our podcast hosting sites and on our website at circletimepodcast.co.uk.